Karen slapped a royal guard's face, thinking he'd stay silent. But what happened next made the crowd gasp and taught everyone an unforgettable lesson about respect. Here's how it unfolded before we continue. Let us know in the comments below where you're watching from. Subscribe to the channel as tomorrow. At the same time, we bring you another remarkable display of royal guard valor that you won't want to miss the late afternoon. Sun cast long shadows across the grounds of Buckingham Palace as Karen Mitchell's shrill voice cut through the peaceful atmosphere. Her designer handbag swung wildly as she gesticulated at the increasingly frustrated palace staff member. "What do you mean? The last entry was 30 minutes ago," she demanded, her American accent sharp with indignation. "Do you know how much I paid for this trip? Do you have any idea who I am?" She thrust her phone forward, displaying what appeared to be a business card for a mid-level real estate agency in Connecticut. The staff member, a dignified gentleman in his 50s, maintained his professional composure. "I apologize, madam, but the palace visiting hours are clearly posted for security reasons. We cannot make exceptions." "Security reasons?" Karen scoffed, running a manicured hand through her meticulously styled blonde bob. "Look around. There are still people inside. What's the difference if one more person goes in?" She gestured toward the palace windows where the last tour group was visible. Making their way through the staterooms, a young couple with 2 children quietly stepped away from the entrance, the mother whispering something in French to her husband as they created distance between themselves and Karen's growing tantrum. The father nodded, guiding their family toward the palace gardens instead. "The difference, madam," the staff member explained with practiced patience, "is that our last tour group entered during regular visiting hours. We maintain strict schedules to ensure, Oh, spare me the bureaucratic nonsense," Karen interrupted, her voice rising further. "This is exactly what's wrong with this country. Too many rules, too many people hiding behind protocol instead of using common sense." She adjusted her designer sunglasses, a gesture that seemed calculated to draw attention to their expensive brand. A group of Japanese tourists paused their photography session, their expressions a mixture of discomfort and fascination. As Karen continued her tea-ite, an elderly British couple shook their heads disapprovingly, the woman muttering something about these sorts of people to her husband. "I demand to speak to your supervisor," Karen announced, assuming the battle stance familiar to service workers worldwide. "Clearly, you don't understand that some rules are meant to be flexible for the right people." Her emphasis on right carried all the entitlement of someone who had never been denied anything she wanted. The staff member's posture remained impeccable, though something in his eyes suggested he'd faced this particular brand of tourist before. "My supervisor would tell you exactly the same thing, madam. The palace's security protocols are not negotiable. Perhaps you would like information about tomorrow's tours?" Karen's face flushed red with anger, clashing with her pastel designer blouse. Tomorrow. I'm not some common tourist who can just change their plans on your whim. I have a schedule. I have standards." Her voice had reached a pitch that made nearby pigeons take flight. That's when her gaze locked onto the royal guard standing at attention. Nearby, something shifted in her expression, a calculating look that suggested she'd found a new target for her frustration. Her grip tightened on her handbag as she turned away from the staff member, her heels clicking against the pavement with determined purpose. "Fine," she said, her voice dripping with manufactured sweetness. "If you won't help me, I'll find someone who actually matters around here." Her eyes never left the guard as she began walking toward him, her entire bearing suggesting she was about to show everyone exactly how important she thought she was. The staff member opened his mouth to warn her, but she was already out of earshot, her designer heels carrying her toward what would prove to be a profound lesson in respect and tradition. As Karen approached the royal guard, her heels struck the pavement with the sharp precision of someone used to commanding attention. Her designer sunglasses now perched atop her head like a crown, allowing everyone to see the entitled determination in her eyes. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice carrying the same tone she used with waiters who brought her the wrong wine. "Yes, you, the one in the furry hat. I need you to help me with something." She positioned herself directly in front of the guard, deliberately invading his personal space. The guard remained motionless, his eyes fixed forward with the discipline of years of military service. His scarlet tunic gleamed in the late afternoon sun, each brass button and medal telling its own story of dedication and service stories. Karen was too self-absorbed to read. "Hello, I'm talking to you." She waved her manicured hand in front of his face, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the light. Is this part of the show playing statue while paying customers are being mistreated? Her voice rose with each question, drawing uncomfortable glances from passing tourists. A middle-aged couple hurried their children past the father, quietly explaining to his curious daughter why the lady's behavior was inappropriate. Karen either didn't notice or didn't care about the example she was setting. "Look," she continued, her tone becoming more condescending. "I understand you have your little routine here. It's cute, really, very quaint." She adjusted her Gucci blouse, a habitual gesture that seemed designed to remind everyone of her self-perceived status. "But surely we can drop the act for a moment, and you can tell your colleagues to let me into the palace. I'm not just anybody." You know, the guard's bearing remained perfect, though someone with military experience might have noticed the subtle tightening of his jaw, the only visible sign that he was indeed hearing every word. "This is ridiculous," Karen announced to no one in particular, though she was clearly playing to the growing audience of uncomfortable onlookers. "I've been to Disney World, and even their character actors know when to break character for important guests." She dug through her designer hand, producing a business card with flourish. "Here, Karen Mitchell, luxury real estate. I sell multi-million-dollar properties." I'm the sort of person you want to accommodate. When the guard didn't react to her credentials, her frustration visibly mounted. "Are you even listening to me, or is all this?" She gestured vaguely at his uniform. "Just for show, because right now you're not showing very good customer service skills." A group of British citizens had paused nearby, their expressions darkening at her dismissive attitude toward their tradition. An elderly man wearing a veteran's pin on his lapel watched with particular interest, his weathered face showing the calm recognition of someone who understood exactly what Karen was failing to grasp. "You know what?" Karen's voice took on the sharp edge of someone unused to being ignored. "I don't think you're even a real soldier. No real military man would just stand there while a lady needed assistance. This whole thing is probably just a tourist trap, actors playing dress-up for the cameras." She leaned closer, her expensive perfume invading the air around them, and not very good actors at that. The guard's discipline held firm, but there was a change in the atmosphere, subtle but palpable, like the pressure drop before a storm. His eyes remained fixed ahead, but they carried the weight of someone who had seen real service, real comet, real sacrifice. Concepts as foreign to Karen as the idea that she might not be the most important person in any given situation. Her hand gripped her handbag tighter, knuckles whitening with growing rage. To someone who viewed the world entirely through the lens of customer service and social status, being ignored was more than just an inconvenience. It was an insult. She couldn't tolerate. "You people clearly don't understand how things work in the real world." Karen's voice rose further, taking on the shrill edge that had made her infamous at every country club she'd frequented. The sound cut through the afternoon air like expensive crystal being scraped across marble, sharp, unpleasant. "And speaking of privilege, when someone of my standing speaks to you, you respond. It's basic courtesy. Not that you'd know anything about that, standing here like some wind-up toy." Her Hermes scarf fluttered in the breeze as she tilted her head, the designer label visible for all to see. A habit born from years of measuring worth by brand names, the pearls at her neck caught the sunlight, each one perfect and likely real. Much like the facade she'd spent years cultivating in Connecticut's most exclusive social circles, she began circling the guard like a predator, though her attempt at intimidation was somewhat undermined by the click of her designer heels against the ancient stones. Each step echoed with entitled authority, the same cadence she used when patrolling open houses or inspecting waitstaff at her charity lunch. "I bet you're not even qualified for a real military position. That's why they have you playing dress-up out here, isn't it? Couldn't make it in actual service. So they gave you a fancy hat and told you to stand still." The guard's ceremonial rifle remained perfectly steady, its brass fittings gleaming with the kind of polish that spoke of hours of dedication. Dedication Karen mistook for subservience. Her reflection distorted across its surface, fracturing her carefully maintained appearance into something closer to her true nature. The elderly veteran shifted his weight, years of military discipline barely containing his reaction to her words. His campaign medals clinked softly against each other, each one earned in moments of valor that Karen's privileged world couldn't begin to comprehend nearby. A young mother covered her son's ears, hurrying him away from the scene, whispering something that sounded like, "Not how we behave." "Darling." The growing crowd watched with a mixture of horror and fascination as Karen continued her tirade, their phones lowered out of respect for the guard's dignity rather than interest in her display. "Let me explain something to you about authority." She leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper that still carried across the courtyard like poison. Her breath smelled of expensive coffee and entitlement, the kind of combination that had cowed service workers throughout New England. "Real authority comes from success, from status. I drive a Mercedes. I live in a gated community. I'm on the board of 3 different charity organizations." Each statement was delivered like a weapon meant to wound what she perceived as lower-class resistance. Her diamond tennis bracelet caught the light as she gestured, each flash a reminder of the wealth she wielded like armor. The guard's posture remained perfect, but there was something in his bearing, now a presence that seemed to grow stronger with each insult, like stay being tempered in fire. His ceremonial rifle gleamed in the fading sunlight, its polished surface reflecting Karen's contorted expression back at her years of military service, had taught him about real authority. The kind earned through sacrifice, not purchased with platinum credit cards. A slight breeze stirred his plume. The only movement in his otherwise statue-like stance, it carried with it the faint scent of Karen's Chanel No. 5, a fragrance that probably cost more than a week of guard duty pay, yet couldn't mask the growing sourness of her disposition. "Oh, still playing soldier," she mocked her frustration, mounting at his continued silence. Her manicured fingers drummed against her designer handbag, a nervous tell that betrayed the first crack in her confident facade. "Does the Queen know you're out here embarrassing her country, making paying tourists feel unwelcome?" She fumbled in her bag, producing her phone with the same flourish she used to brandish business cards at networking events. "Maybe we should call her. I'm sure she'd love to hear about how her toy soldiers are treating important visitors." The phone's case was leather and monogrammed, because even her accessories needed to announce their expense to the world. She held it like a weapon, though against the guard's unwavering discipline, it seemed as ineffective as her previous attempts at intimidation. A group of American tourists had stopped to watch, their faces burning with second-hand embarrassment. One whispered to another, "She's not with us," as if trying to distance themselves from their country, woman's behavior. Their own phones remained pocketed. This wasn't entertainment. It was a display of everything wrong with entitled tourism. "You know what your problem is?" Karen's voice took on the same tone she used when berating restaurant managers. "You think this uniform, this little act of yours makes you special, but let me tell you something. I've seen better security guards at the mall back home. At least they know how to treat VIP customers with respect." The veteran had moved closer, now his campaign medals catching the light. Each one told a story of real service, real sacrifice. Karen's voice shook with rage. "This is your last chance. Drop this act and help me, or I'll ruin your reputation. I have connections."